The reported visibility was 4 miles, but it was closer to 2. And somewhere in that smoke were 1,000 other airplanes all pointed at the same spot I was.
320 Bravo Victor, don't cut in there, you go out west.
We all walked away from Oshkosh this year. Honestly, that's not the part that scared me, because it wasn't the procedure that saved us, it was just dumb luck. Hi, I'm Scott. Welcome to Canard Boulevard. I'm going to walk you through exactly what happened on the Fisk arrival this year and why my Canard was probably one of the worst airplanes to be in that line. Then I'm going to tell you the 11 things that I think have to change before somebody dies doing this approach. And stick around to the end, because the most dangerous one, the one that has to change more than anything else, is one that nobody is talking about. So what is the Fisk arrival? Those who have been to Oshkosh know exactly what this is. The Fisk arrival is a Conga line of airplanes. It starts at a specific designated transition point. Everyone lines up their airplanes and visually follows the one in front of them to the Fisk arrival point, where the controller then tells you which runway to go to, and then you are told by a different controller which dot on the runway to land on. It's used for the incredibly high amount of traffic that is flowing into Oshkosh during the arrival portion of the week. During those times, it is the busiest airport in the entire world, handling an incredible number of airplane arrivals, far greater than any other airport. But the safety of the arrival procedure depends entirely on pilots being able to see the airplane that they're supposed to follow. Now here's the lead up of what caused this problem. Friday we had Canadian wildfire smoke that shut down Oshkosh to IFR for the majority of the day. By the time the smoke cleared enough for VFR arrivals, it was too late in the day for most people to launch. Saturday, we had thunderstorms and convection moving across a large portion of the area, which prevented many people from launching. So again, very few airplanes got into Oshkosh. Sunday, the smoke returned. We were IFR once again. People staged at airports nearby. I myself flew IFR into DeKalb, Illinois, and waited for Oshkosh, hopefully to turn VFR. So this is the trap. We now have 2 days of airplanes stacked up with nowhere to go, all waiting for Oshkosh to go VFR. At 1:15 on Sunday afternoon, a special METAR was released saying Oshkosh was now open marginal VFR with 4 miles of visibility. Every one of those bottled up airplanes released and headed to Oshkosh at the same time. You do not unjam 2 days worth of traffic in one afternoon, not in marginal visibility due to smoke. Once the airplanes reached the transition point, which was Endeavour, or actually as it turned out west of Endeavour, airplanes were coming in at every altitude from every direction in about 2 miles of visibility, at least that's what it looked like to me. It was like a dogfight, airplanes going every which way. I was just hoping that nobody hit me. I've never seen anything like this, and I really hope I never see anything like it again. The ATIS! The ATIS is supposed to tell you what's going on, what to expect in the approach. Every year this is a problem. Nobody can hear the ATIS. This year they said, make sure you pick up the ATIS at least 60 miles from the airport. I didn't pick it up until I was closer than 30 miles. The ATIS is terrible. This year it carried information that had many people getting turned around at Fisk and told to go back and start again. That would not have happened if they could have picked up the ATIS. The Conga line just never ended. It started at Endeavour, but it's kept moving west as more and more airplanes got in line, and to the point where the entry point was 40 miles west of Endeavour.
The line is starting closer to the Wisconsin River for everybody.
The entire line between the entry point and Oshkosh itself was over 100 miles long. This took well over an hour to fly. The speed. This is the real issue. They wanted 2 mile spacing in about 2 miles of visibility. So nobody could really hold spacing because you couldn't really see the guy in front of you if you were at 2 miles. Because you couldn't see the guy in front of you, neither could somebody else who's coming up, and he just thinks, oh, I'm joining the end of the line, when in fact he's actually cutting in between you.
Do not cut in front of me at Endeavour.
Bonanza, what are you doing there? We're following this other Bonanza. Yeah, you don't cut in line. We didn't cut. We've gone all the way around twice.
Once you got somebody cut in front of you, you need to open that spacing up to 2 miles, so you slow down. If I slow down, everybody behind me slows down, and once that keeps happening, everybody is now flying so slow. It's supposed to be 90 knots. We were flying 70 knots and sometimes even slower. Tell me how your airplane flies at 70 knots, clean, in trail, in turbulence from wingtip vortices, without falling out of the sky.
Nothing like flying in people's wingtip vortices.
Especially if you're flying an airplane like mine, you don't. At least half of the airplanes in that line were being asked to fly at a speed that was not safe for them to fly in. You could hear people on the radio pleading for people to speed up, but because of the people continually cutting in, you just couldn't.
Nobody's doing 90 knots. People are doing
482 X-ray, you're doing 82 knots in front of a Bonanza that you cut in front of. Can you please circle around to the end of Endeavor?
The high approach was closed. Normally there's two approaches, one at 1800 feet and one at 2300 feet. The slower one is at 90 knots, the higher one is at 135 knots. Normally for my airplane, I would fly the higher approach. Anybody that has a Mooney or a Twin or a Bonanza, they would all fly the high approach. The high approach was closed because the controllers couldn't see it. But the only way you knew that was because it was on the ATIS that nobody could hear. So the fast airplanes, our airplanes, started it in on the high route, and once they got to Fisk, they were told, hey, the high route's closed, go back all the way back to the end and do it again on the low route.
Went up high, good ride. Go ahead and make that left turn out. Go on the north side of Rush Lake, rejoin 15 miles west of Endeavor Bridge.
And now you had Twins and Bonanzas and everything trying to do this 70-knot conga line with all the slow traffic. It's just impossible. There was chaos on the radio. Pilots were chastising each other over being cut off. People were pleading with others to speed up.
Steerman, we have got to pick it up.
Tempers were flaring. Pilots were swearing at each other, all on the frequency that the controller needed to use to give instructions to the airplanes.
Cirrus behind the Red Wing, are you kidding me? Stop talking. Turn around and get in line. Stop talking. Hey, Greed from the Red Wing. Stop talking, Bonanza 41 Whiskey, are you on frequency? Very tail driver, pick it up. Hey, everybody listen up. We're trying to get you in trail. Do not be scolding each other on frequency, please. We don't need that. We need the frequency to sort you out.
The controller repeatedly asked people to stop transmitting on the channel. At one point he was telling people to shut up, but the pilots were not listening. They would just continue arguing and transmitting over. It was a serious safety of flight issue. The one tool that everybody had to help fix the problem, the radio, just people were using it to make the whole problem worse. Then we had the cheaters. People had spent an hour in line to get to Fisk only to be told to turn around and go back and do the whole thing again. Well, they would turn back and then, well, I don't really want to do that whole thing again. I'm just going to go back a few miles and then just cut in again. It happened over and over again. If you have a look at the ADS-B, you can see it happening. Think about what that means. You're following somebody in low visibility smoke and all of a sudden somebody cuts in front of you and now you got to pull back, and again, you're already doing 70 knots and you're trying to open up that space. And what often happened is the guy that cut in then made it through, and you, who have been in line since Endeavor an hour ago, gets turned back because this guy cut in front of you and killed your spacing. I heard it happen multiple times and people were furious. And now the big one, the part that nobody has talked about, the serious safety of flight issue that I'm just amazed that did not cause a serious accident this year. As the line stretched west, it ran into rising terrain. Look at the VFR chart. You can see the MEF for this area is 2,300 feet. The arrival altitude is 1,800 feet. So we had all kinds of airplanes at 1,800 feet flying around an area with an MEF of 2,300 feet. And there were airplanes flying at 500 AGL over top of rising terrain in low visibility. And worse, there was obstacles in there. There were towers, 1,600, 1,700, over 1,800 feet towers, and people are flying around them at 1,800 feet in low visibility. Let that sit for a second. We were flying in between radio towers, 500 feet off the deck, in smoke that we couldn't see. That's not a busy arrival anymore. That's CFIT accident that just happened not to happen. That's what I meant by my opening. We didn't survive because the system worked. We survived because it just wasn't our day to hit the tower or fly into a hill. And there's more. ATC made this worse on purpose. They only had one runway open, runway 9, while the parallel 36 left and 36 right runways were held in reserve. 2/3 of the runways on the airport weren't even being used during this worst backlog. What were they being reserved for? I don't know. I did hear mass arrivals being used on those runways, but for the most part, while I was in the approach, nobody was landing on 36 left or 36 right. And then as I was getting close to Fisk, they closed the airport entirely for 10 minutes so a military plane could land, with 100 miles of airplanes stacked up waiting to arrive.
No one goes past Fisk. We're in the hold. We're in the hold. Not sure how long, but we're in the hold. Low wing, half mile southwest. Go ahead and start your left turn as well.
Every airplane in that line paid for that arrival in fuel and daylight, and everybody that was in that line got sent back because the airport was closed so that this military jet could land. And keep in mind, almost everything I just showed you comes down to one thing. They ran this arrival at full saturation in weather that really wasn't VFR, and then made a bunch of calls that reduced capacity when they should have been protecting capacity. So how do we fix this? I sat down and thought about this, and I've got 11 specific items. Not vague, hey, let's do this better, but 11 specific changes. Let me go through them quickly. First off, stop overloading the system. How can we do that? 1, meter the demand. This is the big one. Everything else hangs on this. Don't dump 2 days of backlog the instant it flips to marginal. Waves or ground holds or slot times on recovery days. Remember when I talked about everybody released and flew for the transition point at the same time? We need to avoid that. Maybe staging at different airports in the area and then releasing each of those airports individually at certain times to meter the amount of flow into Oshkosh. 2, match the spacing to the visibility. They asked for 2 mile spacing in 2 miles of visibility. Technically, I don't think it was probably quite 2 miles. I don't even know if it was marginal VFR. It was tough to tell. But if you can't see the spacing, especially in a visual environment, that's not spacing, it's hoping. If the weather won't support the density, slow the acceptance rate. Don't slow the airplanes. 3, use all the runways. 1 runway open when they had 3/6 left and right available is just ridiculous. 2/3 of the airport was unavailable during one of the burst backlogs in years. And the runway use should follow demand. Just maybe put off the mass arrivals when the line is stacked up so badly. And 4, don't close the field for a military arrival during the backlog. Maybe hold discretionary arrivals until after the line clears, or maybe outside of the regular times. Or maybe have a specific period during the day that this is the military arrivals so that people know don't get in line during this time, kind of like they do at the air shows. All right, next, communications. The ATIS has never worked on the arrival. You can't hear it. Every year they say they're going to fix it. Every year it doesn't work. And this year it was carrying vital information that we really needed. Nobody knew where the transition point was. Nobody knew that the high arrival was closed. We ended up with people in the high arrival shoving down to the low arrival. They need a better way of delivering the ATIS information. This is critical information. 6, don't rely on ADSB. Just turn the alerts off. My experience was that once we got near to the transition point, there was so much traffic on the ADSB that it was completely unusable. My traffic alert system and terrain warrant and obstacle alerts were going off absolutely continuously at the same time as the radio and all the pilots were all talking. It was chaos. The Oshkosh NOTAM should tell you to turn off your traffic alerts for this approach. Next, break the approach into segments so you have different controllers on different frequencies for different segments of the approach. Having one controller for 100 miles of approach doesn't work, especially when people start talking on top of him and blocking him. If somebody were to have a stuck mic today, they block the approach for 100 miles of airplanes. So having multiple approaches where they could have individual controllers that might have holds going just for their segment in order to relieve some of the traffic ahead of it could help with the jam up that occurs at Fisk and prevent people from being sent all the way back to the end of the line again. And then make radio discipline cost something. The arguing and chastising and yelling and swearing on frequency on top of the approach controller is unacceptable. It's unprofessional and unacceptable. But the problem is nobody knows who's talking and there's no way of enforcing it. I don't know what the answer to this is. But you wouldn't go into Atlanta and then start swearing on the approach frequency at another pilot who is doing something you didn't like. You probably get violated for that. And what's the difference here? We need to have some enforceable rules that actually have teeth to stop this type of activity. Right now, there's zero downside to keying up to complain. Okay, talking about fixing the flying. Separate the fast airplanes not with their own altitude, but with their own route. The problem here was that the controllers closed the high route because they couldn't see it. Well, if we had a different physical route with different controllers for the higher speed aircraft, that wouldn't be an issue. We could have both flowing into the airport, perhaps into different runways at the same time. The high approach now exists only as a different altitude on the same track, so when it closed, all those high-speed airplanes got dumped into the low-speed track. Give the fast airplanes their own lane, and especially in low visibility, so something like a Mooney or Bonanza or my Canard aren't stuck behind a Cub doing 75 knots, particularly in low visibility. Fix the turn back so people actually comply. ADS-B exists, we know who was cheating. When you're told go back to the entry point at Endeavour and it means at least another hour of flying, people cheat and then they're going to cut back in and do what they want. An instruction with a 1 hour penalty and no enforcement is going to be ignored, and it was ignored. If we have segmented parts of the approach, and if you get turned back only for your segment, people are going to be more apt to do that than they are if they're going to be told go back for another 45 minutes this way and then come back for another hour. Next, cap how far west this thing can stretch. The terrain, the towers, 500 feet AGL. When the line runs so far west that it goes into areas that was never surveyed for this approach, the answer is hold and divert, not shove more airplanes into the antennas. We need a hard western limit, full stop. That's my 11 recommendations. None of them are free, and a few of them cost some of the come one, come all magic that makes Oshkosh Oshkosh. But we honestly didn't have that magic this year anyway. We had tempers and cursing. I love Oshkosh. I don't particularly love this arrival, but I love that anybody with a Homebuilt or a Mooney and the skill to fly it can just point their nose at Oshkosh and go. I don't want a reservation system either, but what we had this year was not freedom. It was a coin flip. So tell me, what type of airplane do you have, and what is the slowest that you would fly, and which of my 11 recommendations that you would change or add? I did post a video a few days ago that was a raw, unedited version of my approach this year into Oshkosh, and you will hear all the cursing and swearing and temper tantrums and see the planes flying every which way. It is an hour and 20 minutes long, so it's probably not something for everyone, but I will be having a new video coming out very shortly that is cut down, edited, where I will be explaining exactly what is happening and what decisions I made and why along the entire approach. So look for that soon. And I would ask that you subscribe to this channel so that when I do put that video out, you will get notified about it. And if you like this kind of video, let me know by clicking like on it. So, nobody died this year, and I think that's a miracle. I don't know how we did not have a mid-air collision or a CFIT accident this year at Oshkosh. Let's fix this problem before that stops being true. Thanks for watching.
That was the most stressful flying I've ever done in my life.